don't understand what they want from me. They take my hands, washing them in dirty water. Try to find what's right in a distant place, so far away. The silence fills my heart with empty space. But now I'm sure of where I'll go from here. And tensions rise, they push me to divert my vision. But I will break the ceiling and the walls that kept me in for all this time, and all the reasons that I cannot find.
Don't wait for me to fall under that pressure. Don't wait for me to give it up. Well, I will not work against the forces I trust. Have to stay above the rushing water.
Keep myself composed. It takes a lot not to overload. They can't tell me what is right for me. I just need peace of mind and my ability. But no one said that it would be this hard. But you'll play your part. So I will run until I reach the end, and who knows where I'll be. But all I know is that we'll start again.
Don't wait for me to fall under that pressure. Don't wait for me to give it up. Well, I will not work against the forces I trust. Have to stay above the rushing
my sights on a brand new beginning. A steady rhythm will hold me to the shore. I've got my sights on a brand new beginning. A steady rhythm will hold me to the shore.
everybody. We're just gonna play the music. Let the music flow. And we don't even let it build anymore. Ha! Take that, music! Ha ha! I hope everybody's having a wonderful night tonight. Welcome to MLD Monday. The next level. Oh, man.
Hey Ken Zero, your boy Fat Dolphin here, out with 7 months of subbing. Excited for today's stream.
Hey, Cracer, thank you for 7 months of support. You've been supporting me more than just 7 months, my friend. And I really appreciate it. I cannot put into words the amount of appreciation I have for you. Although you have a tendency to put it into words for me. Rip the fanfic channel. Anyway. I hope everyone's having a wonderful evening tonight. I normally would start off my stream here, the MLD Monday streamcast, with a Kendo Slice's hot take of the week, but I do not actually have one tonight. So what I would like to do with this time is just take a moment to talk about everything that's been kind of going on in my life personally. One, health-wise, things have been better. But I've been very busy trying to take care of things in my health, and sadly, appointments, they're extremem's tough to get at times, and they're also extremely tough to make happen. There's a lot of different things going on in my life on that front that I'm not going to go into, but it's kept me extremely busy, despite the fact that the job that I have does a whole lot less. Like, I have about 10 hours extra from my job week to week. The only disadvantage with my current job is I have a flexible schedule now, which you guys have kind of felt the effects of on MLD Mondays. MLD Mondays starting later. This one actually kind of starting on time, with the exception of me taking a little bit longer with the music and not being able to get straight to this beautiful face. But anyway, that part of things been going well. I'm still mildly depressed about everything, which doesn't bode well for me, and I really feel bad about the fact that I haven't been streaming as much, one, and then two, the fact that the streams that I have made, they've really been forced, and they've been terrible. To be completely honest with myself, they haven't been up to the par of what I would like to put forth to you guys. So I do apologize for that. And I'm looking forward to hopefully doing some more content going forward. But for the time being, in all likelihood, the one stream that you know for sure will happen every week is going to be the MLD Monday stream. And I do plan on continuing my full participation in MLD casting, mainly on Friday and Saturday especially. Let's see here. But I really do appreciate everyone coming out, the support. MLD Monday, one of the really, it's something that's kind of changed my life, and the amount of support you guys have shown me through MLD Monday has been groundbreaking. It's absolutely insane what you guys are doing. So I just want to say again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys are absolutely amazing. And Cracer, this one's for you, my friend. But anyway, I'm gonna get a lobby up. Actually, it'll probably end up being the normal information. I think everybody knows what the MLD Monday lobby is by now. Let's see here. Man, oh man. But yeah, it's been a really, really interesting week for me though, because the casting this last week has been absolutely amazing, one, and then two, I have really enjoyed the past week of casting. Let's see here. Create private match. Okay. That right there is your information. MLD Ken is the password. Feel free to join away and start and play till your heart's content. You guys are worth it. You guys can stream on the scrim on the stream. Who knows? Maybe you might get something Rocket Dailies worthy. Now, where is Badgey? Asks Cracer as he is redeeming questions already. Badgey is hiding in the Badger's den, as it were. But let's see here. I'm gonna try to get Badgey in here in a literal moment. So, I believe I might have him right now. So, my first guest of the evening. My only guest of the evening, excuse me. What am I talking about? But my guest for episode 5, season 2 of the MLD Monday Streamcast is a man who has been part of the Rocket League scene since 2015, actually. He's been behind the scenes for multiple organizations, including Shift Pro League. He's been behind the scenes for Gfinity. He's also now a mainstay of the MLD streams. He was a Season 6 captain of the Pandas, all for 2 weeks. He is known by many names. A Silly Badger, and most recently we know him by Badgey. Badgey, how are you doing tonight? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Badgey's microphone might not be working. I probably should have tested this beforehand. It is okay. Yeah, if somebody else wants to jump in, info is MLD Ken. Jump in. Who knows? Maybe you can 1v1 Mr. Kilt. Yeah, at least I didn't pull the wrong Badgey. Uh-oh. Wait a second. Did you guys hear what I heard? Oh, there he is. The manimal himself. Now, Badgey, I want to ask right off the bat, because it was actually put into the Discord as a question. Why the name Badgey?
So I needed something to change my name to when I was, on Xbox Live years and years ago. Mm-hmm. And I liked Badgers at the time, and I was... Well, the previous name had a terrible euphemism that I, as an 8-year-old at the time, wouldn't have noticed. But, by the time I got into my teen years, I was like, wow, no, that's... no, thank you. So we moved on. And I just liked Badgers at the time. Or I thought they were a neat animal. So, that's what I did. I was Beastly Badger on Xbox, Beast 1Y Badger. If anyone knows, happens to be into the old school Gears of War 2, Gears of War 3, MLG game battle days, I used to ramp around in those places a little bit. So. Man, oh man.
So, Badgey comes... Basically, it just comes from your straight-up love of Badgers, is what you're telling me.
I'm not that into Badgers, I just, needed something. And I wanted something that rhymed, or had alliteration to it, so that's what was in my head at the time. So, that's what I rolled with.
You certainly stuck with it, and you've added so much to it. I gotta know, where did the Badger sound effect come from? When did you come up with that idea?
I don't know. I just somehow made the sound one day, and I was like, oh, that's neat. And then I used to screw with people in school while we were testing and everything was quiet, and just, throw Predator sounds around. So I just worked that into my brand eventually as just that. So actually, to go from I was Beastly Badger, and then I was a Lovely Badger, and then a Fancy Badger, then a Silly Badger, And then I had this habit of calling Shogun, who's an absolutely adorable person. Once he gets past his little moniker that he throws up on stream, he's incredibly endearing past his ego that he throws up. And I'm the one who gave him the pet name Shogi Bear. And so I thought if I was going to do that, then I was just going to change my own. Like, he started doing it to me as Badgey, and then I thought, you know what, I'll just stick with that. So one of the things that I called him is now one of his emotes, and that makes me so happy on the inside because I care about that man so much.
Really? Which one is that?
So it's Shogi Bear.
So
it's his
literally
little hello.
Shogi Bear is you. That is awesome. I did not know the behind-the-scenes story there. That's pretty cool.
Is it that? I will find it in a moment. No. It did not run out today. Oh, no, there it is. There we go. There's chat. Chat can have that.
Shogi Bear.
That's also his emote tag is Shogi, so
Nice.
which is hilarious. But anyways, yeah, I just happened to know him from some old fun days that I got introduced to him through some of the RLC boys, and we had a blast.
Yeah. So I have to, just based off of this opening conversation we just had, the back and forth with one simple question. We know that you have a little bit of history in Rocket League. Not many people know how deep the history goes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you on the scene? You said you've been on the scene since 2015, so basically since the start of Rocket League.
So I wasn't at the start, I wasn't in SARP, I wasn't in the alpha, but I had just come out of like a really not great time in my life at the end of, or in the middle of 2015. And so I was just working around and just finding stuff to do, and I happened to find Rocket League, and you know, it seemed to be a lot more wholesome and a lot more, had a lot more replay value to me than CS did at the time. So Rocket League took me away from Counter-Strike, and I eventually started looking up more and more content, and I was like, who's this guy? Who's that guy? And Rocket League's actually the thing that got me to use Twitch, and which is something that I use almost on a daily basis now. But I guess we can get to that at a later point. But I found the MLG YouTube stuff. I found that stuff being announced, and I started watching it as it was being released, and I got so excited and into it, and to see the players at the time like Cosmic Aftershock and Teamy Weemy, which would turn into Flipside Tactics, and you know, some of the other guys that were around at the time, Air Force 2, which was Team Rocket US eventually is what that would turn into, Dig Dog's team. Happened to be the first group that came through in the open quals and then got destroyed in the MLG League. I love the boys on that team, Red and Not Valid, and you know, the guys who came through with that. But yeah, I got involved with, I didn't get involved, I watched some of that stuff and thought, man, I love this stuff. I'm hooked and I'm addicted. And so I got on Reddit and I started looking around places and started doing stuff and just hung around in Twitch chat a lot and got myself known around through a few people, just the guys who happened to be active in the scene, because I would just hang out with them in Twitch chat, and I guess they found me endearing. And past the moniker on stream, I'm very harsh, and I'm self-deprecating, and I'm harsh towards my friends, and if I'm making fun of you, it's because I enjoy you. Which is, I'm surprised that they put up with me still, but eventually what that would lead into is I got super involved watching the Rocket League Central stuff, and I got really active there. I followed their stuff constantly. The Rocket Royales that happened in 2015 with the guys that put up, the major guys early in the scene like Utrecht and SLX Express were putting up money for that stuff, and Cloud Fuel and some other guys that got involved. Watching James Bott become a personality was amazing, and I'm just trying to get through my head on some of the things that stood out to me during that time. But that was all 2015, and then we ramped around the new year, and I was hanging around the RLC Discord while the Pro League was happening, because I'm like, okay, why not? And all of a sudden, actually I should frame it properly. So I came in, was watching the RLC Pro League. I thought, I'm gonna go hang out in the Discord. Just some stuff was going on, and I'm like, wow, this stuff is cool. And I was being active in there, and I was just saying hello to people and talking. And then I decided I was gonna hop into a voice channel. And then all of a sudden, about like 4 or 5 minutes later, Deep Ants, who I endearingly call by his real name all the time, Dave, because I have a thing for pet names, but what are pet names online when everybody chooses their own moniker, so I just call him by his real name. Dave was just some guy who was involved with the RLC at the time. He was doing stats for them, actually, for RLC Pro League, and he hopped into the Discord, and he was like, hey, what's up? And then all of a sudden, CJ Link and Roguish Elf and DM Rawlings and Cloud Fuel were all sitting in a channel with me, and I'm like, oh, hello, people who make Rocket League happen. So you've got to remember at the time, when we went through this, you had the MLG Pro League and the MLG Invitational, and that stuff happened in 2015, and you had ESL happening. Cloud Fuel was an ESL admin. He had been involved in the alpha for Rocket League, and he was trying to organize stuff, and I remember him talking about how he tried to do a tournament by email and how awful that was.
Tournament by email?
Yep, of all things. But he got past that, and he was super involved, and he kind of pulled people together for the competitive side of things and got involved with Rocket League Garage, which was rocket-league.com, which is, you know, the biggest fan site for Rocket League, or at least it was, you know, for a very long time, and has a very deep history with the Rocket League esports scene. But without going into that too much, so Cloud Fuel and his room of rowdies came in and started hanging around, and they just said, hey, this is cool and such. And it's like, I don't expect us to use Discord again, but we've got this TeamSpeak, and so they invited me to TeamSpeak. And so they gave me that stuff, started giving me passwords to channels because it was pseudo-public, so random people would come in and out and do all their stuff. But they gave me info on that, I got in, and they were like, okay. And I was like, hi. And we didn't know what we were doing with each other. I was the only guy who got brought into RLC to do absolutely nothing, I think. They just liked having me around for some reason. And we got going, and they got me managing the TeamSpeak because I happened to know TeamSpeak because I had a buddy who ran that stuff, and I managed that stuff for him. And eventually, I was hanging around one day after RLC Pro League, which, mind you, is basically the greatest thing that I think has come through in Rocket League esports. Just so to go back to what I was saying a second ago, Rocket League Central kind of put on the Rocket Royales at first, and kind of, along with some other smaller groups, started Rocket League esports. They gave it a scene, they gave it a name, they gave it a place, and built off what MLG had in the Invitational and the Pro League stuff, and just kind of ran with it. So they got in, and they would do weekly tournaments, and these people who had money would come in and put up their own money, and people who, like me and some other guys, I just donated a little bit to the RLC Pro League, but there's guys who put in so much time and effort, and even their own money when they sometimes didn't have it, to make Rocket League esports happen, and that's the heart of what RLC was and is. And I was so happy to just be around those guys at the time, because I liked doing that stuff, I liked seeing it happen, and those guys are the ones who were making that stuff happen. But past that, after RLC Pro League, we got RLCS, and, you know, the rest is history with Psyonix. They do all that stuff now. Well, I guess it was Psyonix and Twitch at the time, and then eventually Psyonix. But big props to all those guys who put in the effort early on and did all that stuff at Twitch, and coming in and fostering that environment for them, and Psyonix eventually getting in and getting that stuff going. But the way I actually got involved was one day I was hanging out with QuestFerret at the time, who's a web dev for rocket-league.com. And he's absolutely such a fun person to be around. I love him to death, but unfortunately we don't get to see him as much because of work schedules. But anyways, he was managing the overlays and parts of, he was managing the tournament, but he was managing back-end and web stuff, and the thing that he couldn't do was players, and the one dude who was supposed to be there to do that, Cloud, kind of got busy, and I think he hates me telling the story, because when I originally told it, he kind of denied it, but I think later on he got over it. He was a little late to the party on that, so I, as a dude who has never done that stuff before, with Questy in my ear saying, Badger, help me, I've never done this before, I can't do this, I can't do people. With Questy saying that, I'm like, okay. And so that was my first, you know, thing ever doing anything in Rocket League esports, was me being around at a time when they needed somebody to step in to do TO stuff because everybody got busy in a moment, and I got to hang out with Questy while I figured out how to be a TO in what was, you know, the biggest community tournament at the time, with all of these pro players at my fingertips, and I'm like, oh crap. But things got going. Cloud showed up partway through after stuff started getting managed and seeding was happening, and that stuff just got rolling. That was my first big thing with TO work. Another big thing that came through at about the same time was me becoming a power ranker, North American power ranker. Gibbs and Durkand and Cloud were on the committee at the time. It was started up by them and Shalthus. I think it was a collective effort between them. I don't remember who started it. Maybe it was Shalthus at the time. And that'll be a big dude who has who I draw a lot of inspiration from for being involved, was, you know, those two people, Cloud and Shalthus, and I can't think of them enough for what they've done for the scene, because the scene's been such a good thing for me. But past that, there were guys stepping out, getting more involved, doing other things, and didn't really have time for it as much. And so it ended up being me, Durkand, and D-Pants doing our rankings of all things, and Softcode. Softcode at the time was doing that. And so they brought me in as a trial guy at the same time with a part-time soldier or something. He was a guy who was doing writing content at the time, and he did some fantastic stuff, but he eventually just didn't have the time for it. I don't remember specifically his name or like his moniker or whatever, but if you go back and you look through that stuff, you look through the old Power Rankings post, you'll find it. DKTO is tournament organizer. I should say, I just happened to look in chat at the same time. Guys who go through and organize the events and such for tournaments, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that gets unnoticed for the most part. But we did that, and I got involved with Power Rankings. That brought me on immediately because Dave just said, we were talking one day and he's like, wow, you know this and this and this, and I'm like, yeah, I know life just watching tournaments. And so it's like, it was pretty easy to go back and say, yeah, I know all this stuff about North America because I just watch Rocket League so much, and it's probably a problem, but, you know, I'll roll with it. And so they brought me in, and we were doing rankings and doing creative writing stuff for that, and pulling up stuff and doing all this. And, you know, people had to step out as they got more involved, and that was always the thing with Power Rankings, is that it was always a fleeting business for whoever was involved with it at the time, because Shalthos got involved with stuff, then Cloud got installed with stuff, then Durkand got hired by Psionics, and Gibbs ended up doing RLCS, and Dave ended up doing local Chicago stuff, and then eventually I got pulled out to do other things too. So it's like, it was always an ever-changing roster of people. And Softgoat, who was involved early on with that stuff for a while, he was the first community guy, I expect, that was brought on that wasn't explicitly part of RLC or already within somewhere. They just picked him up off of a Reddit thing. And he did an amazing job with that stuff, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong. He was also a partial competitive player at the time. And so I did Power Rankings. I'd go out, I'd watch stuff, I'd collect results with a whole group of other people, and we'd all hate ourselves for about 2 or 3 hours while we just entered data on that stuff. Some of the old spreadsheets are just nasty. They're awful to look at, and nobody should ever, you know, think that what we had there was a spreadsheet, because it just looks terrible. But stuff got organized as time went on, and so did we. And that's where I got to meet Durkand and got to talk with guys like Junesy and one of my really close friends, Mr. Littlethor, who was doing the EU stuff at the time. And I got to talk to all those guys, and we had a big Skype group, and we were always throwing stuff back and forth, and we had really fun conversations in the midst of talking about everything that was happening. And that brought me into getting involved with the scene and knowing what was going on. And I think that may have happened before I did the TO stuff. I got involved with the TO stuff. Because that's why I felt confident seeding teams, because it was NA, and like I happened to know the team, so I didn't really have a problem with it. And actually, I can pull up a document because I've got my esports work history, because I did a resume last year, and I could just look back at this stuff. I shouldn't have to just call this out, but that was up through mid 2016. So that's where I got involved with that esports. There we go. Here's my thing. Yeah, RLC, March, North American Community Power Rankings. The same time they brought us in, the same time they brought me into RLC, and that March, the end of the RLC Pro League. I guess it would have been the end of February for RLC, and I got involved in doing stuff in March. Was when I became a power ranker. And I was also doing the ambassador stuff for Rocket League Central, which is community outreach, and that's just going out, talking to people, getting people involved, finding out information about streamers, about personalities, about players, about teams, getting information and bringing that stuff back, and vouching for Rocket League Central throughout the community, and just being somebody who goes out and helps in situations. And that was a really cool thing, was like, they gave me a title that said, okay, this dude's legit, and said, we trust you to go do good things, now go do good things. And they kind of gave me a leash, and that was really awesome, because it jump-started me into being involved in Rocket League, and I can't thank them enough for that. But around May, we went from being a trial member in the Power Rankings to being a community member, a committee member. So we do writing, and I do public relations. I get out on the Reddit and Twitter and like put that stuff out and go back and talk to people. And I was the big Reddit guy who'd spend hours writing up text responses to people like Classics who'd say, this is wrong. And I'm like, why is it wrong? And so I'd bait them out, and we'd have a conversation across, like, you know, the entirety of a day back and forth, and I'd have paragraphs of text. And I don't want to brag on Classics. He's just the one guy who tended to come out and like respond on Reddit and be like, yeah, okay, whatever. And just throw out his opinions. He's a dude who didn't really have a problem with that. Some people were a little more soft-spoken, or wouldn't really go out and do that, and other guys would just be like, oh, that's cool. And around that time, I was getting super involved with Twitch. I was going around, I became a mod in Low5's chat and some other places. And Low5, who now does some stuff with NG, if I remember correctly, was a big streamer and a player for Never on Target and Mock It at the time.
Yeah.
And so he was a big streamer, getting involved in Rocket League, and a player. And that's a dude that I really attached to, and he was a dude who got me to get on Twitch every single day. And so I'd do that, and then I'd just be more involved with Rocket League, because I'd see all these people coming through who were also involved with Rocket League, and talk to them and get involved and say, hey, and then we'd go here and do this and talk and do that, and then all that fun stuff. But I remember interviewing him on his stream about stuff to write up for the next week that was going to Power Rankings, and that was like a really cool moment for me. But we got into June, we got past the RLC Pro League stuff and Rocket League Central and all these other guys who did so much work to bring the Rocket League scene into a competitive stance where it was able to stand on its own 2 feet almost. And I can't just say just Rocket League Central. There were so many guys who put in so much effort around the scene, and, you know, RLC Pro League was actually community funded. The finals were, and when you saw Crown and Jewels come back and do like an 8-second 2-goal return in a game that then they would reverse sweep in the series in like was it the best of 7 or best of 9? I don't even remember at this point. But they went through and they did that, and it was incredible. And if you haven't seen that, you can go back and find that stuff on YouTube, the finals. And it's an incredible game. Ends with a weird goal too. But they all that stuff was community funded, and everybody came out and put in a little bit of money, even though some of the Psionics guys were putting in money to that. But yeah, we were doing that fun stuff. And then all of a sudden June comes around, it was May when RLCS started up for the first time, Season 1, Open Qual 1, because they did a weird format with point systems, and you did one qualifier and then you did a second qualifier, and where you standard was combined, and then you got into the league, and it was weird. But the first time around that they did it, Qual 1 was so taxing and so awful for them that Cloud was like, because he was with Twitch Esports at the time doing the Rocket League program, and he's like, I need people. And so he went out and he got himself a group of people, and I got to be part of that, and said, all right, we're doing tournament moderation. We're going to make sure that this tournament works. And so I got to sit through with those guys on Saturday and Sunday morning. Sunday I left partway through to go to church and came back and finished it off with them. And we did the open quals for Season 1 Qual 2. With me and Dave getting to be like the right-hand guys to Cloud, while he brought in all these other people who were helping too, and everybody was so friendly and so energized and ready to do that stuff, and it was really cool. And so I got to do tournament moderation for them. And then in July, when we did Rocket Royales again, that's where it was. That was it. July is where I got my tournament, is where I got involved as the tournament organizer, because I was helping doing the Rocket Royales officially a little bit more. And then we had the same July in 2016, I got to be a Twitch mod for RLCS. We were doing Season 1 Split 2 at the time, so we had that fun stuff. But August and September were kind of the same, doing stuff with RLC, getting the players invited for Rocket Royales, doing player relations, tournament organizer stuff, doing the Twitch chat stuff for Psionics, and then the RLCS moderation stuff kept going in Season 2, and then I was doing Twitch chat stuff for Season 2 too, for RLCS. And then it was kind of a little bit of a lull at the end of 2016 where stuff just kind of slowed down and all that crap kind of... Everything came to a halt in Rocket League Esports after we did Season 2, because Amsterdam was a ton of fun for a lot of people, and then the scene just kind of shut down for a little bit once we got into the Christmas time. So before I go into the next half of this thing, is there anything you want to ask? Because I'm going to get lost, and I'm going to get lost, my guy, and I'm not going to know where I'm at.
No, I mean, I'll take a moment to talk just because, wow, I'll let you have a breath. Do you need water? Do you need to take...
I should actually get a...
Do you need a
I've got water here.
chair? Because, I mean, I feel like this is story time with Badgey. This is absolutely amazing.
It's great if you get to sit down with guys like Cloud or Shalthus who are involved from the very, very beginning, and then you get to sit down and listen to them talk, and they talk about things like Gambit being a player who tried to play with an EU team with Tempo Storm and got moved over there, and players are moving around, and you saw all the early players, guys that you would never hear of now, like DeBoer and Elmer Fudd, and the guys who did Shazam, who were active at the time, and and they can go back even farther, and they have perspective on that stuff too, and those are guys who gave up a lot of stuff to do this. I remember even when times when some of those guys were going through financial hardships, they were still putting in money and time and effort, and I won't call them out because they're probably embarrassed to talk about it a little bit, but one of those guys who was doing that, who you'd be able to recognize now, actually was still doing Rocket League Esports stuff when he didn't have a job. And that's the kind of group that I got involved with. And I think I just tried to emulate the personalities and the effort that those guys are putting into it.
Wow.
And, you know, things have worked out and gotten a lot better now. People are in a lot better places, but...
Yeah.
As we move into 2017...
Well, I'm gonna take you up on your offer really quick. I want to break in just really quick. Wow.
Well, yeah, you get to talk about 2015, and that's like, wow, that's where everything started. And then 2016 is like, wow, things ramped up and we got moving with Rocket League.
I love the fact that we have an entire, we have the. I wanted to talk about your history in Rocket League, and the fact is you've been there essentially since the beginning, and it's.
Well, I've been watching, and then I got involved.
This is Badgey Monday, Luke Rocks. You are correct. You are absolutely correct. Let's see here. I wanted to ask some of the other questions just to break your train of thought for a second.
Cool.
But we're on 2017 here in just a second. Kimmy wanted to ask if you would please forget everything that was said in voice chat last night. I'm not sure what that means.
We can...
I'm not sure you'd want to go into that.
No, we were just having some fun in the Flums Discord, that's all. Or the Elite. I think it was the Elite. It was the Elite because Tai was there. Just hanging around. And you know Tai, he's such a character.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we get weird conversations, weird places, but anyways.
But the serious question out of that was, if Rocket League didn't exist and you couldn't cast the games, what would have your interest? And what would your interest be? Would you be interested in casting any other games? And this kind of goes into your personal interests. A point that we were going to talk about. What are some of your personal interests in and outside of Rocket League?
I honestly have no idea, because Rocket League has played a major, serious part in my life in the past 3 years. Because if we're gonna get real for a second, I came out of college after a series of mental breakdowns and depressive breakdowns, and Rocket League and video games were always my thing to go to, because it was a fantasy, it was another world, it was something I could get lost in, and that was my addiction that kept me going through a lot of stuff. That and my faith, really, and so to get through that stuff was super hard for me, and I got really lucky that in the moments where I was struggling and having issues, I had something to fall back on. Because I didn't want to talk to my family about the problems I was having. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't even really think of them as solvable problems. I just thought, like, I as a person had a base issue. It was something that couldn't be fixed. And I knew that was so wrong, considering not just what I was growing up with, but the things that I believe. And I have a really hard time with, because I'm bipolar and have very small schizophrenic episodes that aren't, life altering or, super significant, and have some OCD tendencies. So it's like all that stuff compounds, and then all of a sudden I feel like I'm out of my mind, and, Rocket League was the thing that took me away from that. And it's really garnered some of my interests that I have now. I was super interested in trying to do, D&D at some point in high school. And so I had some friends who were, we were all football nerds, and we'd play football, and then we'd go out, and then we'd, play some video games or screw around and try and do D&D. And it's like, what type of combination do we have here? It was also my little friend group that were in the gifted program for the special education stuff, because we were a little bit above the rest of the average at the time. Not that that shows at any point, because I sound like an idiot.
It's okay. But we've all had our experiences in the gifted and talented programs.
yeah, I get it, Kendo. I get the joke you're trying to make there.
That's
seriously.
Actually that's not as much that's not as much a joke as it is me being serious.
Oosh. It's a fun time though. I had a friend group.
I can't say I haven't been in the same circle.
But we went through, and I was a dude who everybody thought was gonna, be successful, go out, do a bunch of weird, super crazy things, because they all thought I was a smart kid. And, for the most part, I was able to get through my classes without doing homework, because I would just test out of crap most of the time. And so once I got into college and, was in a liberal arts college for most things, of all places, not doing math and science, and was trying to do broadcast production with media communications. I was like, oh, okay. So my interest totally shifted in what I wanted to do, because when I was going into college, I thought, physics and math, that's something for me. And then I thought, oh, but I did this thing in high school with film, and that was super fun. And then after that, it was, I got involved with stuff in high school, and it's like, oh, I really like philosophy. And then I did all that stuff, and if I wasn't casting Rocket League as a hobby, I'd probably still be working a day job, because, it wasn't a day job, it was part-time, and actually mostly night shift. But I don't even know if I'd have that, because they terminated my position and I lost my job after that. But I don't know where I'd be, because Rocket League was something I fell back on. It's something to keep me sane. I'd always fall back and be involved with my church and be involved with my faith, and that got me going through things. That got me up and out of bed. And then when I needed to just chill out or go somewhere, I'd throw on some music and just go and play Rocket League for hours. That's why now, if you look at it, I'm even playing free play right now, because it helps me think, because I'm a bit of a pacer. Dude who likes to pace, and that, I guess, transitions to Rocket League and free play.
Yeah.
I have I've got 72 hours in this game. And
wow.
A lot of that is just me screwing around. But I don't know. I never thought about casting, really. I grew up doing some theater and some music stuff when I was younger through church, and I did that up through high school. And I wanted to do media communications in college, and then that all broke down because you can't hold your scholarships while you're bawling your eyes out in bed. Ooch. But
I hear you there.
But-
yeah.
yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I
did
was
you-
just
did
I
you
was just
have
gonna
anything?
say it's I have really not much idea because, like, I guess I'm thankful that God gave me something I was interested in at a very stressful point in my life that kept me going, kind of. So
Yeah. That's awesome. I can definitely say Rocket League did a similar thing for me, especially when my father died early on in Season 4 of the MLD.
ooch.
Believe it. Yeah, actually, it was actually prior to Season 4 of the MLD, but it was
Yeah.
it was a very interesting time in my life.
Yeah, and distractions are great, man.
Distractions are very
That's
good.
that's a buddy of mine laughing at a quote that I had the other day while we were having a talk about. I was just hitting up a friend from high school or from school. We were just talking the other day, and he pulled that out of the conversation we were having. And it was like, wow, that's a statement I need to hold on to. But yeah, there's something to be said about, and I guess that's why I loved fantasy. I loved video games. I loved all that stuff because it was a break from what life was for so long. And so if I wasn't doing Rocket League, I'd probably just be hanging out with the same online friend group that I had, just bouncing around between games, you know, maybe playing Gary's mod, but like not really doing anything. Because Rocket League has given me a lot of opportunities now. It's given me opportunities that I've been able to follow up with. There's been a lot of opportunities that have passed by me that I'm super salty about, but but stuff past that is, I guess we'll learn back. I guess we'll get into a little bit later.
Everyone joining from the fat host from Stovad's channel. Welcome to MLD Monday. Today we are actually talking to Badgey, who we were actually literally going through his perspective of the history of Rocket League, starting in 2015. We went through 2016, and why don't we continue where we left off, Badgey, with 2017?
Well,
we'll get to the body of this meal and then put a cloche on it, if you know what I mean.
oh gosh, what a recurring joke. Things kind of get similar, things kind of get samey here and there, but it's a lot of the being involved with RLCS, doing the moderation for the open goals and doing Twitch chat moderation stuff. The only thing that really happens in the early part of 2017 is I went from being just a committee member on the Power Rankings to being the head committee member. So me and Dave were then managing that, and then Dave stepped out, or D-Pants as you would see him around the Chicago Rocket League scene or anywhere else if you happen to find him rolling around. And so I then started managing that stuff, and then eventually handed it off to somebody who's super capable, Jasher, who has been leading that stuff who's been helping with it since the middle of 2017, and who's now following through with that stuff in the moment. And we brought on Stump and Stranger and some fun guys. But anyways, we did that. I say we. I don't know why I'm saying we. I got involved with that. Or I got promoted, I guess, once Dirk stepped out to, do his job at Psyonix. Which was awesome to see him get. And he was already removed at the point to which that came through because he was involved with them. And I was getting involved with stuff there. And then we ended up with Shift Pro League. And Shift was kind of a defining moment in my history with Rocket League, because I had done TO stuff, I had done moderation, I had organized events, put them together, set them up, helped people get going, hosted them, done that fun stuff, and helped other people find talent. When Rival was starting up, when they were PRL, when they were Pro Rocket League. Before they had to rebrand and they had their site up. That was, you know, mostly done. That never got finished. And now you see the new one that they have now. They were looking for guys, and I had met the very first person, the very first friend that I ever made in Rocket League. Is actually a dude who you'd recognize now in the Rocket League scene, but you may never guess who it is. Because, well, obviously there's a lot of people, but of all the two personalities, of two of the most self-obsessed, ridiculous, weird personalities that you find in Rocket League, two of them, which is I and Unthink, were the first two people to meet up with each other in the first month of Rocket League. And so I garnered a huge friendship with him, and I drug him around to so many places trying to get him to cast stuff because he was so good at it. And that's how I met him. He was the only other guy that would use voice chat in Rocket League, and we'd troll around, and he would cast games and try and hand it off to me, and I was so bad. I had no attempt and no hope of being able to do it properly at the time. But he'd play and we'd have fun and we'd get along and do whatever. But I dragged him down to PRL while they were starting up one day and said, "Here, this is your guy. You're gonna use him because I'm telling you to use him. Now go with it." And so he's now doing management stuff over there since he's stepped away from casting Rocket now.
Yeah, rip Unthink.
He's still maybe behind Shogi just a little bit. He's still one of my favorite guys, one of my favorite casters. And it's a close race between him and Shogi for my favorite casters. Just because I love the personality that Unthink has. Not that Shogun doesn't, it's just Shogun's is a little more ego-based, and Unthink Ryan is just absolutely hilarious all the time, no matter what he's saying. And that's great, and that's sometimes bad, because we'll joke about anything, and not everything should be joked about. But I dragged him down there, and that was kind of what I was doing at the time with Rocket League, was doing the ambassador thing for RLC, and that's, you reach out, you get people involved, you say, hey, you could do this here, there, and like try and give recommendations and try and help organizations grow. And so I did that with a lot of places. I actually tried doing that with Mocket before Lucky got involved, and then another guy that I met super early on was he's now stolen a name from a Key and Peele sketch, Stumptavian RoboClick.
Yep.
Or Stump. I call him Carson because that's just what I know him as, is Carson Clements Racing.
Yeah.
But he was a guy I got involved with super early on, and we both got involved with Mocket, and we were hanging around and having a fun time, and he got involved in a more official capacity while I was involved with RLC. And then I tried to drag him out of there so many times, but he stuck through it. And then when the moment came, like, him and his group separated and did Nexus, and Nexus was a huge thing for a long time.
Yep.
But that's kind of what I did.
Man.
But I never really had an experience doing, pure management, and never had an experience just doing stuff outside of that with Rocket League. I had tasted and done stuff here or there. Early on in 2017, I was trying to cast. I was trying to do that stuff. I went out and basically interviewed almost every RLCS caster at the time and got their perspectives on how they did casting for Rocket League. And as much as I got tips and tricks and stuff, Shogi was a super big help in giving me base, like, casting doctrine to work with a little bit. And I don't have that little file that I used to have, I think, which is unfortunate. Because
Yeah,
it was...
I would blackmail you for that file.
It was so full of notes, and there were like 6 lines at the top and 6 lines at the bottom that just had the words "Don't trash the players" repeated for 6 lines, because I was brutally honest in some of the things I would say, and insult humor with my friends tends to be a big thing. So I was trying to work to not do that. But eventually it just took me doing it, and I did analysis at the time because that was easy for me, because I like to talk about Rocket League, and I had super big pet peeves on how that stuff would go into, but we'll get into that in a second. I did the casting stuff for a little bit, and then I got worried that Alstedo, of all people, who had previously been working with Hype, and Hype stopped going at the time. He was also involved with Rocket League Central, and was like, I'm going to go make an effort to start up Shift again, which is Shift Pro League, which had been operating. It was the third longest running organization in Rocket League to date at the time, which was behind Rocket League Central and Mocket. And we don't respect Mocket. If there's anything to be said, about that. I literally put out 2 takedown pieces on Mocket. I'm the dude who literally put that information out there and put all of that stuff in the air, in the open, and, you know, made an effort to make people know that this wasn't a good group of people who were coming through.
Yeah.
The people who were involved in doing the tournament stuff were great. I loved those guys. I loved Stump. I loved Carrie. I didn't know him at the time, but Matt, or Cybernetics, who was doing coding stuff for them,
Yeah.
and he was amazing. And all of those guys were great, but I just didn't like the management and all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes with Flex and Azael. Not really Azael. He just kind of got strung along for the ride, and mostly Lucky or Marshall, or I don't know. We're not going to get into the Bitcoin stuff because oh gosh.
Won't get into that too much because I know early Mocket and the Mocket most of us know. Big difference because a lot of it was driven by that community early on.
Yeah. The early stuff was amazing, and I got to be involved with that a little bit because I loved the cast and the stuff that they do. And oh my gosh, did Carson try and cast once, and it was awful. But I did all that. I got a chance to see all that stuff happen, and then Alstedo was like, "I'm going to start up SPL," and I'm like, "Do you need some help?" And he's like, "Sure," and immediately gave me a leadership position. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And what I didn't know was the fact that a few days later, we would get an RFP, a request for proposal from Twitch, asking if, you know, you wanted a chance to run an RLCS qualifier. And it's like, oh, holy crap.
Wow.
Because they sent out RFPs to a whole bunch of organizations, and they're like, these are groups that are running stuff, who have been involved, who have proven themselves that they can do stuff, and we'll just see what they bring back. And, you know, there was a lot of talk happening at the time that would eventually get past that about Cloud being involved, but he totally removed himself from the judgment process when it came to that stuff because he didn't want to feel biased, because he knew people that he worked with before were in different organizations, and he's like, I can tell you what they do, but I'm not going to tell you my opinions on them because I don't want to be biased. And that was an amazing thing that I remember hearing about that situation. So to put that in perspective, we had about 2.5 weeks to announce Shift was coming back, get a full graphics package, pull our staff back together, organize all that stuff, find a prize pool, put that up, get a tournament running, find a time slot for it, get viewership for it, and then write a full business proposal, which none of us had ever done before, in 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
And so I have my thing here, which is, so we started that, and we doubled our staff. We created all of our promotional material, our own promotional materials. I got to organize meetings and staff across 7 time zones. That was Pacific, Mountain, Central, Eastern, BST, GMT, or British time, Central European time, Central European Summer Time, Central African Standard Time, and Australian Western Standard Time, because we had BISA. And we had the South American guys, Alpha and Ultraism, who were in Africa, South Africa, doing that stuff. And then we had guys like Jarv Jam in Europe and those guys. And it was ridiculous. And we went from a group of like 18 people to a group of like 45 in that time span.
Absolutely amazing.
And I kind of did a little bit of everything. Because at the time, all the other directors were either stepping out, weren't involved, or were heading off to LAN. Because it was kind of just me and Alstedo once we got to that point. And it was like, oh. And Alstedo was managing Denial at the time, so he had to go out and he had to go do LAN stuff. So in the middle of doing all this stuff, I had a depressive breakdown in the middle of trying to work when we were in the middle of crunch time trying to create materials to get people on board to help us run this stuff and get going. And we went from 18 to 45 people, managed meetings, got everything together, got our Twitter account up and going, got the Twitch stuff all settled. We got in, we talked with Twitch and Psyonix a little bit, or we talked with the Twitch guys. We got our stuff together. We somehow got a graphics package thanks to the amazing guys of Zebo and Snucleus. Snucleus is a rival guy, and Zebo's a dude who has kind of stepped away from that stuff a little bit. I think, if I remember correctly, who was super important to us at the time, who helped us so much, and I can't thank him enough for that. But we got our graphics package together and our stuff that we would show off to Twitch, in our proposal, in our pitch deck, and say, hey, this is what we can do. And we pulled all that stuff together. We got our casters up and going. We got them in place. We organized that. We made a run a show, and within a week, we organized. In that final week, it was so hard on us. We got our stuff together, our graphics package done, our promotion materials out, pulled all our casters together, told them we were going to do it Friday at midnight, and ran a $350 Battle Car Pacifica. Where we had teams like Applesauce, who would turn into Fibion, who would turn into Dignitas, with like Chicago and Halo on them, show up, and it was like, oh. And then we had some other guys show up. It was like we had what was still G. We had Dapper Mio and Timmy there, and it's like, oh. And we had these other guys, and it was like, holy crap, we somehow got these guys. And it wasn't because, for some of them it was because it was they wanted to win money. And, guys who play tournaments just want to play tournaments.
Yeah.
But some of those guys, like, I don't know if they would have. I don't know if the momentum guys at the time, or the selfless guys, Dapper Mio, I don't know if they would have showed up if it wasn't Chef. Yeah. Because there was a history of them growing up in that environment, getting better, and like becoming a team, and they did all that through the shift journeys previously. And maybe I'm just being overly nostalgic about that stuff, but we did all that, and I stayed up all night. Because we ran from midnight to 5, and then I took a 2-hour nap after we finished, got up and spent the next 15 hours trying to figure out how to write a business proposal. And we did it. We pulled all that stuff together and we sent it off, and we got information a little while afterwards that we were the third selected group to run a qualifier, and then we got information that there would be a fourth, and then MLD came through and did that stuff. And that was awesome. And I'm leaving out a really important detail, and that's the reason we went through with all that. The reason that I signed on to do all that stuff. I signed on to help, but the whole reason that I went through all of the troubles that I did to help make sure that this stuff got through was because Achieves and Daz and Stax and Curtis and Silent Echo and all those guys at RLC who were casters, and hadn't really had shots at being part of the big guys yet, who had put in so much effort and so much time, especially guys like Achieves at the time, who was grinding out Gfinity after Gfinity. I hit a little bit of a health break at the end of April during that year, and so I stopped casting for a little bit, but this stuff came up, and then I was like, I'm going to drop the casting, regardless of how much that I enjoy it. These guys deserve this stuff. I'll get over it, and we'll make sure that they have those opportunities. And so that's what I did. I made sure that those guys got those opportunities because I thought this would be important to them. And, regardless of whether or not they think it is, or the guys have stopped casting or do other stuff, I still think I did a good thing, and that's what matters for me.
Yeah.
It's not just feeling good, but like doing something for your friends, and that felt super important because I wanted to give back to those guys who had helped me through a lot of stuff. Because at the beginning of January, I was in a crisis stabilization unit for a weekend because
I had some bits. Wanted to drop them on You Can Zero.
We went through all
Shout
that
out
stuff,
to
and it was
Mateo's Dolphin Wife.
these guys, when I came back and beforehand, were super supportive and helpful, and like they were just the guys that I hung out with, and they helped me through a lot of that stuff, whether they were just hanging around or like actually being guys that I talked to. Like Dave was a guy who helped me through a lot of that stuff, and I can't help but just be thankful towards those people, and just the people that God blessed me with in my life for that stuff. And it's amazing how it was a lot of work, but that was my way of giving back. And while I felt like so many times I'd been skipped up on opportunities, like I was doing writing content before people were doing writing content in the scene. I was, and right when I stopped, other people got opportunities. Like you saw these people, these sites picking up people for stuff. And then I was, I previously tried to play, and like I made my way like about 50 points under, about 100 points under top 100 in like the preseason season 1 for platinum, and then like gave up on that because man, I wasn't good enough to be a player. That was an early realization. I did casting, and then I gave it up to make sure that those other guys had opportunities, and then those opportunities started flooding through for a little bit.
Yeah.
And you saw the RLRS stuff happen the very next year.
Oh, man.
CRL in the fall, and oh my gosh, all that stuff picked up for them. And I felt like I had been scorned because I had decided to do stuff for the sake of other people, and you know, not been looking forward for myself, and not been looking out for myself in some of those situations when I could have been selfish and maybe gotten opportunities for myself. But you know, eventually we got past that, and I was still doing the Twitch stuff. I was still doing like the what was it? The moderation crap. You know, Twitch chat tournament stuff with RLCS, and that was fun. But oh yeah, we also had the RLCS calls, and I managed production for that. And we found a lifesaver of a player in freaking Rogers, who was a dude that Puff met through his work in a Slack chat. And Rogers is an amazing asset. Like, you've seen his work on MLD, if anybody watches. I assume most of the people here watch MLD. Like,
Well,
let's get that out of the way.
MLD Monday. Badgey Monday, technically, today, but MLD Monday
Yeah.
normally.
But Rogers was such a lifesaver in that the stuff that we were gonna put out for RLCS, as much as like Zebo and Nucleus worked on it, it was average compared to everybody else's stuff. And then all of a sudden this monster of a freaking graphics and motion designer comes through and says, hey, I'm gonna do this stuff for you. And I'm like, what? And it just gets dropped in our laps. Gets dropped in our lap thanks to Puff finding the dude just randomly through his stuff. And we went through that, and he actually coached me and Zebo on how to do like better graphics and better production stuff and all this other stuff to make sure we had quality stuff. And he was going into work and remoting into his computer to run renders 24/7 on his stuff, and like gave up playing anything for like 2 weeks to make sure, because we had a 2-week period after we submitted our proposal and got stuff back to get all our crap together for the RLCS calls. And it was like, ah. And so we went through that debacle, but he was such a big player, and I can't thank him enough for that stuff. But we went through that fun, and then at the latter part of the year, I was considering trying to just give up Rocket League and stuff, because I invested so much time and I wasn't getting, like, emotionally I was getting stuff out of it, but I wasn't getting anything physical. Like, I couldn't, you know, make a job out of it. I couldn't have anything to show. And as much as I think that my parents and my family cared and friends cared about like me being happy, it's like, it's hard to tell them like, this is a lot for me and it means so much. And I had a little come to Jesus meeting with myself and, you know, Jimmer and some other guys who were close to being in the same boat. And it was like, let's give it another effort and let's push it through and see what happens. And then we decided we were going to try and do something with Midwest Land. We went out there, we promoted that stuff. We tried to get a partnership set up. We got the Psionics partnered event, the Gauntlet, and the Gauntlet was a ton of fun. But it didn't, you know, sustain us. And as we got into the latter part of November, once we got into December, Jimmer switched jobs and he couldn't support us financially. And Yerodin, who was our other financial supporter, lost his job. And then everything that basically SPL and the community the community and SPL kind of poured out just whatever we had left to make sure that Yerodin would be okay. Because we were super worried about him, because he's a dude that we loved and we wanted him to be okay. Because he was just a big part of our group and a big part of our leadership at the time. So we pushed that stuff through, and it was like, wow, we're just strange now. We've got all these guys who can do stuff, but we don't have any money. We've been screwed over on the partnership stuff that we've tried to get through. We've been screwed over trying to get sponsors. We've been screwed over in this opportunity and that. We got an opportunity here, but it didn't give us the boost that we needed. We don't have anything sustainable, and it's just like, what do we do? And then at the end of December, right around January rolls around, and Dave hits me up, and he's like, yo, I got this thing. Maybe I can't do it, but I know you could do it. And there's this other thing associated with it, you know, that your buddies and you guys at SPL might be able to do. And he's like, Axel Toss wants to run this thing, and Dave's like, I'm too busy. I'm gonna go do DreamHack Leipzig, because Dave's a big boy. He's a big contender. He does tournament organization for large scale lands.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know large scale lands, but the land itself wasn't super large scale, but or like all the people involved. It wasn't an overwhelming amount of people. It wasn't an Evo, but like the whole production and everything that went along with it was super big because it was DreamHack Leipzig. And he's like, I can't do this, but you can. And so Dave's been super helpful in helping me find that stuff, and we're rolling into 2018. But I'll find a stopping point for you in a sec. But he got me involved with the Axel Toss, and we did the Ting Open and SPL. You know, sometimes I regret looking back on it, like the things that came out of it, but it was a good opportunity for us. And as wonky as stuff was, is the weird request that we had out of Axel, and like all the different format changes and last second things and all the stuff that came through. It was weird, but SPL actually got paid for that. And it was like, wow. And then I thought, I've got all these guys who are doing all this work, and as much as I want to get paid, these guys deserve it. So I went and I don't like to talk about this because I don't like talking about stuff that I've done, because I don't want to sound big-headed or anything.
Oh, yeah.
Or sound like I'm, you know, a great guy or anything. But I went through and I made sure that any money that was going to go to me ended up in the pockets of Rajus and those other guys who helped, because they were big contenders. Like Eurodin and Rajus were two really big guys, and Joshua came through and helped, and Mr. Little Thor and Mojomo, or Momo, as we were lovingly calling him at the time, were doing stuff, and those guys got paid, and that was an amazing experience to say, I actually got to pay these guys for once. And it's like, they've done so much for the scene, they've done so much, and like, I get to give back to them, and that felt awesome too. And then eventually I got a recommendation for a dude from Alstedo with this company, and I got a recommendation from Dave with a different company who were doing stuff in Rocket League. But that's work, and all this other stuff was volunteer stuff, and that's basically up through February of 2018, where, you know, all my life was basically contended, because I'm a dude who's depressed out of his mind, trying to figure out stuff, trying to figure out his life in a moment where he's going through medication changes and therapy and all this stuff with my head to try and get me settled, so I can, you know, like kind of try and start over with life, because I lost friends, I lost family, well, I lost friends, I lost my job, I lost my academic career, almost all basically due to mental illness. And then I got to come through, and things finally started to settle down, and things are actually, you know, having a bit of an upturn finally. But I guess I'll stop there for now, and we'll go back into whatever. Sorry because I think I've talked for like an hour and a half now.
Not quite, but I can't say it hasn't been anything but amazing to listen to. I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, we've been given a detailed history from your perspective on Rocket League esports, and man, that's really extreme. Yeah, we'll put a cloche on Rocket League history just for now. Talk about a few other things. If anybody has any questions for Badgey, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'm gonna go through a couple of them that were posted in the Discord. So make sure you click on the link down in the tabs below. If you haven't joined the Discord already, it's one of the ways that, hey, we can all hang out, keep in touch, etc., etc. There's memes there. There used to be fan fictions there, so if you were scared of the fan fictions before, they're gone now. That is one question Cracer did have. Have you heard of the Cracer fan fictions?
I've heard a little bit. I haven't, involved myself with that stuff because there may have been a point in time in which that Seismic White was running a D&D campaign with Low 5, Chronovi, James Bot, and Cloud Fuel at one point in time, and Shalthus.
Yes.
And I may have wrote a fanfic or two about that because it was hilarious at the time. So I'm trying to keep myself away from that because I know where I'll go. But he ran that on stream, and that was another cool thing that was happening at the time, Dungeon League, that I got super attached with.
Wow.
But,
so there were fanfics made of that. Oh boy.
yeah.
Yeehaw.
I should also point out, during all that, I also failed to mention Animate J, who was super helpful in having somebody to talk to in some of those moments, especially in the latter part of 2017 and 2018. He's been a super big help to me and just been a cool, personal friend. So, but past that, I think that is most of it.
Yeah, shout out to Jay, of course. I know Jay was in the chat earlier. I think he was a little dejected. You mentioned every single RLC caster other than Jay.
Well, he had his stuff with MLD. And it's,
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I did try and get him involved because I was trying to get him to do this stuff initially. But then we learned that MLD got a spot, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna run that basically. He's gonna have his whole show, and then he ended up streaming it instead of casting. I was like, oh. So.
Streaming it, casting it, he's done pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Jay has been essentially the MLD.
Well, I meant for the RLCS quals.
Well, yeah.
That we did in season 4. Yeah, season 4 of RLCS.
Who knows? Maybe they'll do that again someday. But serious question from Cracer I thought was really,
he did
really
stream
good.
SPLs too.
I have to preface it by saying it's a serious question because 99% of them are not coming out of it. But the serious ones he does come, the serious ones he does come up with are doozies, I will say. And in light of all we've talked about, you've had a lot of accomplishments. You've done a lot of things, and you've seen Rocket League esports grow from its planting, essentially, and been involved in that. You essentially were one of the keepers of the soil, as it were. You're helping water it, watching it grow. I know you're newer to casting, but what is something you wish to accomplish in casting, and also in Rocket League in general? So, do you have a goal that you'd like to accomplish?
I'd like to be involved in some way, being able to reward the people who have done so much in Rocket League, get the stuff that they deserve, and seeing Rocket League grow in a way that's that respects the stuff that they've done, and also see them maybe get opportunities too. And I got to do the Ballistics Brawl thanks to your recommendation, did the tournament organizer on that, and did a lot of other stuff, but we're not going to do another story time. And recently I've been contracted out with another company that's trying to get involved in Rocket League, and I'm hoping that through that I'll be able to help bring those guys into the forefront of, maybe not the scene, but the forefront of people's respects when it comes to where Rocket League came from, because there's a lot of people past me who have been involved, and it's hard for me to think as to be a torchbearer for Rocket League esports, considering what I've seen guys like Cloud and Shalthus and those guys do, and it's hard for me to comprehend or to say that, or because I feel like it sounds like bragging to me. But I guess I've been involved for a little while, and I wasn't alone in it, and I want to see those other guys get stuff too, just like now how I'm finally getting stuff.
Yeah, that's completely awesome. I appreciate that. Oh, man.
Casting, I don't know. I've got a lot of opinions about that stuff, but I'd like to see the analysis in Rocket League be taken to another level. I don't think I can really do it because I don't know if I have the skills for that, and I think there's a lack of the tools that we really need to do analysis on stuff. But I think once the analysis grows, like, casting in itself will get better because there will be more and better talking points for the color guys to go into. And I'd like to see us get off a director cam because, boy, but that's a different pet peeve.
You can ask
but-
Jay what he thinks about director cam. I think you already know.
But I'd like to see casting come into itself in the fact that we get analysts and color guys who are like the people that I always hear Dave and Omer praise, like Eddie Olczyk,
Yes.
I believe does the Chicago Blackhawks stuff, who comes in and he can tell you all about the game, and then he'll get in and say, like, if you're a young hockey player, look at this. And it's like,
Yeah.
I wish there was more to the color role than we currently see. And
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. I mean, I'm not gonna diss current color guys by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of it is reactionary, and there isn't as much body to it. And it's shallow. I guess that might be the wrong word for it, but there isn't as much body as like you would see in a professional sportscast. And yeah, I feel like that's what's missing. You get somebody with that experience, you get someone with that perspective.
So, and I think I only have a combined like casting time of 4 months, and I've got a whole lot of big opinions and a whole lot of not follow through in certain situations. So I think I've still got a long way to go, but I want to develop with the scene and, maybe contribute to the development of the scene in that way. Like I've gotten to be a part of the development of orgs and tournament organizers, and just different places. And that's maybe a place where I'd like to lend a hand and, maybe not particularly be recognized, but just have an opportunity to help it grow. So.
That's awesome. I'm actually going to do something extremely rare. Something I don't usually do on MLD Mondays, especially in the current format. I'm actually going to take a quick break, mainly for personal reasons.
Probably. It's been...
So, Badgey, about 3 minutes. Do you mind if we come back and continue our conversation?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. It'll just be
Let me grab a
one
drink.
moment. We will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to leave you with the gameplay on. That way you don't have to worry about what's going down, but I will be right back. Okay, we're kind of back. We'll work on getting Badgey back in. Man, oh man, I apologize. That's something I have never had to do before in the middle of an MLD Monday. So I'm mildly embarrassed about that. Oh, goodness. Well, I hope everyone is enjoying the stream. Again, if you have any questions for Badgey, feel free to put them in the chat. I know it's been absolutely amazing to listen to Badgey just really telling a story that not many of us get to hear, that a perspective that very few of us have actually been able to hear. Essentially a biographical history of Rocket League esports. And yeah, it's been really fun to have his amazing point of view here. Let's see here. Okay, and we're working on getting back in, and let's see. Badgey Kendo 1v1. That's an interesting thought, Tracer. But yeah, we do have Badgey back. Badgey is in the game right now, I just noticed. So,
I was.
Yeah.
I was gonna step out and let PZ get back in. I was just wasting time.
No, if you're okay. If you can multitask and still tell the stories at the same time, that'd be that'd be.
I'll probably need to go back to free play, so that way I don't tank anybody and just let them have fun. But yeah, where were we?
I know Tracer would like us to 1v1. How do you feel like that would go?
We could 1v1 and talk.
1v1 and talk. At some point, we can probably make that the finale. Just so
Works for me.
Tracer can have his giggles.
At this rate, I've had an hour and a half of free play practice, so. So.
Oh man, Tracer's coming in with questions. If you could no longer cast, what would you do instead? I feel like what you are already doing is the answer.
Yeah, I run tournaments, get paid easy. I'd probably be playing an MLD. Playing originally was a lot of fun, doing the whole captain thing and drafting and pulling some players together and having some fun with that. I thought was great. Unfortunately, it just came down to not having time, because at the end of the day, I was also last season trying to get SPL managed and get us working and trying to find an opportunity for us to do something and trying to manage Ting at the same time, the Ting Open, which just, that wasn't happening. Not with as many hoops we had to jump through to make that work. So.
One other question. He likes to do this, Tracer, and it's a dangerous question. He normally asks it of MLD folks what they would change about the MLD, but Tracer would like to know if you could change one thing about RLCS and RLRS, what change would you make?
I think the thing that we always talk about inside the TeamSpeak is running the double round robin instead of just, a single length. Making the league longer if they were going to stick with the league, but I think everybody's on the topic of format change, and there's everybody's, that's been up in the community and people have been talking about it, trying to see if everybody wants to see something done, because I think there's people who aren't big fans of how things happen at the moment. I don't know what the answer is there, but doing something other than what we have, as long as it's not the season 1 stuff, may be interesting. I'd like to see a clear path from amateur to pro on how teams can get from point A to point B if they're just starting out, or if they are somewhere in the middle and they want to find a way to get to the top. Giving the teams that grind it out the opportunity to do such, I think would be awesome.
I would agree with Eric, because right now it does seem a lot like it's more the you have a core of players, and there not too many people can break into that core. It's literally at you get 0.0001% that are able to break into the RLRS.
that and maybe wait for orgs to make money in Rocket League, because if you've ever seen discussions with Daz and the multiple team owners he's actually had on, between Flipside and NRG, it's like a big talk at the moment is orgs are struggling to sustain themselves in Rocket League.
Yeah.
So
a lot of orgs they lose money because they are staying in Rocket League. It's kind of sad. I credit to the orgs that are actually staying in Rocket League.
Unless you're Kill Force Denial or Amphibion and you're not playing your players. But jokes aside.
Yeah. But wah, wah, wah.
Anyways.
That took a dark turn there. I wanted to go back into your thoughts on analysis and casting in Rocket League. Was there anything else you'd like to mention about that? I mean, we both feel like there could be more depth, for sure. But what are some other things you'd like to see?
Okay, so my problem stems not particularly from casting itself, but maybe from coaching. I've been super involved with my church all the way throughout my life, and sometimes involuntarily growing up, and then voluntarily as I got older and stepped away from that, and then back into it not with a new mindset, but with a different heart for that stuff. And one of the things that I always did, one of the things I was always involved with was a sports ministry called Upward, which is super popular. Started in South Carolina by a dude by the name of Kaz, and started in Spartanburg, actually, in North Carolina. I think North Carolina? South Carolina? One of those places. And it's this big basketball league that runs through, and you get through, you get organized, you get put on teams, and you have fun with it. And they teach fundamentals, and obviously they teach simplistic Christian doctrine through it, because it's a church thing. But that's something that I always loved and I got involved with. And by the time I hit 5th grade, 6th grade, I was being involved with the coaching process. And by the time I hit 6th grade, they made me a head coach of a team, and I was like, oh gosh. And so I love helping to see players and talent develop, regardless of if it be traditional sports or esports or whatever it be, actually. So being able to do coaching stuff is super interesting to me. And I have big pet peeves about how I've seen stuff done. Generally, I've seen in youth sports that have been organized outside of the church environment, there are teams that come through and don't particularly. Excuse me. Sorry, I went to get a drink also. And I also came back with these little brownie cookies that my niece made. So I may have had a little bit of that. But you get coaches who don't care about teams, but more specifically, you get coaches who are just doing what they've been taught. And that's not particularly... You can't blame them for that, because that's how they've been coached. And they assume that's how that coaches work, because that's what they were brought up with. But I have big issues with, the idea that you should just run drills, because drills develop a mentality of, I have to do it a specific way, and so whenever you play in a game, you're going to force yourself into the situation instead of being able to be creative in it. So like if you do a layup the same way 1,000 times, when you get into a game, you're going to try and set up that specific layup. You're not going to be able to take it from wherever in the paint. You're not going to be able to cross. You're not going to be able to take it back. And you're not going to be able to do anything with the ball on the drive if you don't know how to get around players, because you've been taught on an open lane against nobody doing a drill 100 times over on that. But there's a different issue that I have that I think stems all of this, and that is just kind of a preface to tell you how much of a rant this is going to be. Is that you see coaches in Rocket League, actually. People doing replay review, people trying to help other people get better, and even bad teammates who try and coach you mid-game, which, I mean, not a bad thing, but particularly when people aren't receptive and you're being hypocritical about it, does not help. But it comes down to, like, coaches in Rocket League. You'll see them do replay analysis, and they'll watch it from one player's perspective and pick out this, and that, and say, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And problem one is that sometimes they won't explain why it's wrong. And problem two, which I think is worse, is that they don't give you an idea on how to, they give you an idea on what you should do. They don't tell you or give you a methodology on how to do the right thing. Because in a situation where you're handing the ball over to the other team, you can say, hey, don't hit the ball at the other players. And it's like, okay, I have to make sure that there's not another player in my field. Okay, don't hit the ball into this specific corner on their side. It's like, okay, I need to make sure not to do that. All right, make sure you're leading your teammate with that. And it's like, okay, now I have this massive checklist of stuff in my head that I have to do if I want to, do possession right. When instead you should be teaching somebody on how to keep possession on, you need to work on your dribbles, you need to have a basic dribbling mechanic. And you need to play the areas of the field that are not only non-compressed, but have players retreating in them. And you need to look for spaces that will bring you opportunity for future to come. So you're not looking for a space that's empty, you're not looking for a space that's not the corner, you're not looking for a space that has a teammate in it specifically, you're looking for what's going to set me up in a moment to set up a shot. And so instead of having to go through this checklist of 3 things, or usually when it comes down to the replay reviews and all the stuff that I'm ranting about, you get 1,000 different things for 1,000 different situations that are totally different and totally situational. You just have to think in your head, okay, where can I set myself up for a shot? And it's as simple as that. And I think that stems into an ideology in casting and analysis where people think there's a specific way to play the game. And a lot of people think that the way they play the game is the golden rule on how Rocket League should be played. They think they're God's gift to analysis. Or, maybe not that, but they definitely have their own ideas on how stuff should work. And so they're saying it like, you should do this in this situation, or this in this situation. And that's why you hear me when I cast a lot say, okay, there's a lot of things that could be done. And if you're going to do this, if you're going to try it this way, this is a way you can go about it. I don't want to be deterministic in how things should be. I don't want to be the one who says, this is how this has to work. And there's always exceptions a little bit to every rule, I think. And even my little exceptions that I say to how that works is, what should always be true in the fact that when you're playing Rocket League, unless you're on your own side, on retreat, in the net, with more than one other player on your side of the field, attacking you with the ball, they have possession, you have more than one thing to do. In fact, you have at least 3 things to do in every situation. You can collapse on the ball. You can call the bluff and play away from it, as in a fake or a dribble. Or you can do nothing and hold your ground. And when I see somebody say, oh, they needed to do this in a situation, it's like, but you're ignoring every other factor that goes into the game. And you're saying that because that's what you would do. That's not how you coach a team. Telling somebody how you play Rocket League or how you play basketball doesn't, help anybody in that situation. It doesn't help. A lineman coach doesn't help the freaking, skill guys figure out what they need to do in a situation. Sure, they can help them read them if they're going to collapse on a tight end and get a crack. But, what else are they going to do? You're not teaching them the skill set that they need. You're teaching them how you play the game. And I think traditional sports has that a lot better figured out than we do. And, maybe other esports do. In the fact that you've got a whole array of things happening in front of you. And you need to be able to expand on the fact of a methodology and an idea in a situation on what you can do, and not crack down on what's wrong about a play, or try and be the guy who sits there and says, oh, you should do this. Trying to be the guy who sits there and just tells you how to play Rocket League from his perspective is not somebody who's going to help you get better at Rocket League in any other way, in any other circumstance or any other play style other than exactly his, and only up to his skill level. And that's why people who do coaching right, who are good analysts about the game, are not always the best, or not always the most skilled, not always the most mechanically gifted, not always the absolute best player on the pitch. But they know how the game works, and they can see past their own ability, and they can see past the things that only they would do in a situation. I think CS has got that really figured out in the fact that they have in-game leaders again. And so you have somebody on the pitch whose job is directly to figure out tactics. And so he has an idea of the fact that there's so much more to manage about a situation than what's directly in front of him. And they do a great job of leading their team into good situations that allow the players themselves to be creative in those situations and really bring out their own mechanical ability in ways that you wouldn't expect. Because the greatest thing that you can have on the field, past mechanics, past being really good at this one repetitive motion, is having creativity on the pitch. And that's why I used to love watching Marky early on in RLCS and in the MLG leagues, because he was just such a creative player on how he would attack the ball sometimes. And sometimes it was silly, sometimes it was crazy, sometimes it was stupid. But he got out there and he tried different things, and he was a hard guy to read at times. And he was, you know, considered the best in the world because he was good at it. And whether or not he had anybody who helped him get to that point, I think there's a lot that can be said for the coaches in Rocket League to help better teams, and I think there's a lot to be said for analysis or analysts or color guys who want to be involved in Rocket League, or who just want to be better casters, who say we should just present the game as it is and show that it's a very complex and very integrated system. It's this massive branching tree of options that all lead down to a single moment, and that is the final goal that's scored in the game. And everything that has happened beforehand, every goal, every touch, every misplay, every little area that you position yourself is really where that goes. And that's all that leads into, is something that happens 20 seconds ago on the pitch could affect, you know, the goal that happens. And I think there's a lot to be said about those things that don't get said. And that's just my big pet peeve. Otherwise, I don't think people talk about positioning nearly enough, and people just focus on mechanics. So, and people talk about, you know, the goal itself a little too much and don't focus on what happens off the ball. But that big thing that took me forever to explain is my biggest pet peeve on casting.
Speaking of analysis, you do analysis of MLD VODs on your Twitch. Do you have a set schedule?
Poorly sometimes. Not yet. I want to... It also depends on how many replays I get from the games. I want to do them after... I tried doing them after the stream, and that was a little bit harsh. And I got some viewership out of some of that. But it's just an awkward time for people to do that, like, at 11:30, at 12 o'clock at night. So, I'm thinking maybe I turn it into a Tuesday thing, and I go back and go over all the replays that I have, so...
That would be absolutely wonderful. I know I stopped by for one of those streams, and it was remarkably fun and revealing. So, I was going to say, make sure everyone in the chat, if you're not already following Badgey on Twitch, it is twitch.tv/Badgey. And of course on Twitter, it's Badgey with an underscore at the end. So just a mild
Oh gosh, that
difference
upsets me. That upsets me so much that I can't get that. That I can't get that yet. Somebody else has that.
Are they active?
Yeah. My Twitter is literally just there for me to post memes, and I don't meme other people's memes. I mean my own memes. So get on my level, everybody else who subtweets that crap. I make my own stuff. I am the best memer in RLCS history. I'm the one who made Shogun and Carpet play drums. I'm the one who made Shogun and Carpet make a sandwich. I'm the one who put Lawler's brisk moment into the pavement. I'm kidding. I like to play around with Photoshop and After Effects, and I do fun stuff with that sometimes, and Twitter tends to be my repository for that stuff. Otherwise, I also occasionally tweet out when I go live for Twitch, but not always. But Twitch has been a lot more active these days.
You're also responsible for the inanimate J for Sona, which is probably my favorite MLD meme.
Oh, this is my persona. Oh my gosh. He had to explain that to his wife. That's something. So. Anyways.
Going through an internet moment at the moment.
Ooch.
Not sure what is going on. Blame Jay. Fix it, Dirk.
What's up, Dirk?
Oh, and I missed. Oh, well. Let's see here. See, J-Dubs did have a number of questions in the
All
Discord, which I thought were pretty good. Without looking at your stat book, who do you have winning this season? You're learning more and more about the MLD. I think he's trying to test your knowledge now.
Well, I can only go off what I've seen on streams because I don't pay as much attention to the stuff that happens off streams. I always check the records before we start up each week on Friday, and I catch up on that stuff. But I haven't particularly looked at pairings. But for the teams that make it to playoffs, I think everybody's got the Hawks on their sights at the moment. I think Tai team, the Elite, really have something special in the fact that they played up, or they can play up with their players. And I don't know who came in to take Maple Syrup's place if it's been replaced yet. I don't remember. My brain is just so racked on other stuff that is happening at this time. I like the comments because I think they're cool because I hang out with those guys. I really don't know, and it'll really come into the latter part of the season when I get to see these players' games, because that's what will determine it for me. Not just the records that get held, but just how the teams play, I think is my big deal.
Oh, man. I don't know who or what is going on right now, but the stream just died twice. So you mentioned Tai and the Elite, you feel like are doing really good. They're playing up.
I think they could, if, they could. But I think what it'll come down to me is seeing more games on stream and, casting more of those games just to get to watch how teams play. And, once we get down to the playoffs, like, once we start getting into that grind time, it could be anybody who makes it through.
Yeah.
And so, ask me that question again when I've seen all the teams, or I've seen most of the teams, and we have playoffs, not figured out, but we know who's going to be in what places. And then I can give you a concrete answer, I think.
Knowing who's going to be in what places is a good thing. Oh, my goodness.
I do love me some Kilt, too.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Kilt is the man. Kimmy, thanks for the bits. Let's see here. Really do appreciate you. Have a wonderful night, Kimmy. By the way, folks in the chat, Kimmy is actually going to be our next guest for next week's MLD Monday. So we'll learn a little bit about one of the ladies of the MLD. It'll be a wonderful stream. Definitely looking forward to that. You may or may have not done something to my server. I don't know what in the world's going on, but I keep dropping every single frame. I keep on dropping every single frame, other than what's going on in Discord. In Discord, it's perfectly fine. I can hear Badgey just fine, and everything's going perfectly fine there. But the stream and everything else has been going haywire. Anyway. Yeah, he's not making any predictions yet, but if he had to go off of what he's seen, the Champions League Elite look intriguing. Anyway.
I wouldn't say they have it, but I'd say they have a... They're doing a fine job of playing up while they don't have, you know, their top-end team figured out. So...
Who would you say...
Since the loss of Maple Syrup.
Who would you say is your player to watch?
Or
who would you say has been your favorite player to watch so far?
My favorite player to watch? Gosh. I'm actually going to look at my book for this one. Let's see just who I've seen on stream. And just see what names come up. And tell me who does what. Let's not look at that. Let's not look at that. That's kind of, it's kind of like we're looking for a champion league. Let's check it. Listen, Jingle Biscuit and pizza sauce. Pieces. Jingle Biscuit was a good one to see. Mr. Kill was an amazing one to see. Mike, I love watching Mike. He pulls out some ridiculous defensive plays and moments that I don't think I've seen out of a lot of other players. Let's see who else. That's kind of gosh, it's hard to see. You know, actually, out of all the Champion League players, I think the one that I had the most fun watching and the most fun casting was Jeremazing.
Jeremazing, interesting.
We went through, and that was the first time I did like real straight up replay analysis on the games because they were so good. It was week 2 or 3, and it was the Puffins versus the Hawks, and Jeremazing was playing with Magic against Hell and Kilt, and it was like they went 2-3, but the games were absolutely great. It was 2-3 first game, 4-3, then 6-5, then 4-6, then 2-4. They were all close games, most of them high scoring, and Jeremazing, his positioning was so good in a lot of situations that where we know that his mechanics aren't, you know, always up to par, especially with a lot of the Champion League because he's one of the lower players. He's one of the lower salary players. He came through and like he's just in the right spot so many times. That was one of my favorite ones to watch and one of my favorite ones to cast.
Okay. Going through, I think we're gonna probably close up here pretty soon. I might actually invite you to a 1v1 really quick so we can essentially kick this off or kill this off with a very interesting flare.
Ask my question. See Craven in chat.
Ask my question. Ask my question. Okay, Craven's question. He's completely selling himself out in the Discord. What does Badgey love most about Craven? Then be as savage as you'd like.
Let's see. What would it be? He sounds as cute as his Discord profile picture. There we go.
Oh, look at that. That I'm pretty sure that's actually a dude.
Exactly.
Okay. No problem.
This is the wow, Kendo. Oh no.
I don't know. It might be a gal. I don't know. Either way, cute. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Very cute.
He's lovable.
Very lovable.
Craven's. He's adorable.
Has his own pointless role, by the way.
We'll do next season. No, thank you, Jay. No, thank you.
What's it like knowing you're taking over MLD? Nice.
Oh, his profile picture was Link. It used to be a Raichu, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it was a Raichu before. Now his profile picture is Link. Badgey, if you'd like the same information, we can actually do a 1v1 real quick.
All right.
Now, of course,
Sure.
here on the Kendo Slice channel, it has to be a high stakes 1v1, and no, Cracer, you are not casting. You can cast in the Discord, and everybody can listen to you there. You are not casting here on the channel. I am not letting you cast live. I need to be... No. Anyway. I mean...
I'm ready to...
Crayman, in all honesty, Link could be a girl. A lot of people thought Link was a girl at one point. Do you want blue or orange? Do you have a preference?
No, whatever.
Okay. So, high stakes, what do you risk against me? What would you... Is there anything you'd like to have me do? Any
Let me rant more?
What's up?
Let me rant more?
I will give you a complete 5-minute rant. And if you lose, we're going to have to do something dark and evil.
Oh, nice.
It is... apparently, Cracer would like you to read a fanfiction live.
Oh. That's,
Would you submit to this if you lost?
Sure, because I think I'm going to win, and then I think that he's going to pay me on my own stream to do it.
Okay. We'll go with this. Because you think you're going to win. Okay. I see how it is. Okay.
Alright. Small balls here. Boop. Josh, your payment murdered you. Remember that time, Jay, that he told me he'd do the same and then I didn't? You remember that? Because I'm a good friend, unlike you. Freaking...
Okay. Maybe I shouldn't talk to that.
Gosh, I used to no-life 1v1s. It's been so long since I played, though. When I didn't have friends, I spent 600 hours going with Takumi and Merc, in between Takumi and Merc, for like the first, like, between hours 200 and 800, that's about all I did was play, ones. Cracer, I would answer your question, but I'm a closeted weeb, and I don't want anybody to know that.
Nice. That might be the best answer to a Cracer waifu question of all time.
So... No. Yes. Chosen one. Ooch. You know, what's I'm trying to think back on that list that I gave you. It's like, what did we not go through tonight? Because I think I spent so much time on it. So I'm trying to figure out what to rant about.
Well, there's your current... We touched a little bit on your current involvement in
oh yeah, but that's whatever.
But
that's not fun.
We talked a little bit about your thoughts and analysis, thoughts on analysis and casting in Rocket League.
To my wife. Let's see. Whoop.
Go for the body, not for the ball.